You're listening to the Recovered Life Show, the show that helps people in recovery live their best recovered lives. And here is your host, Damon Frank.
And welcome back to the Recovered Life Show. How you doing today, Kristina?
Beautiful. Happy Monday to you.
Happy Monday to you. Guess what? Can you believe this? This just seems a little hard for me to believe. But we're on episode
every time.
82,
It
Monday,
does.
March 7th,
It does.
2022.
It's really exciting. March 7th, too. Wow. It's like February came and went.
Exactly.
And now we're already in the first week of March.
We're already here live streaming again. We hit you on or about 8 a.m.
Yeah.
every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So good to see you, Kristina.
Thank you.
Wishing everybody a great Monday. We're back from the weekend.
Yes.
In recovery, Kristina, we know that Mondays are actually a good thing. Mondays used to be a horrible thing.
Not anymore.
When you're in active addiction, but now it's a good thing.
It's a do-over day, right? We get to start again. It's amazing. Really, truly. I enjoy Mondays. I know, setting my intentions and knowing what the week is going to be like loosely really, really helps me. And so I love Monday. I get very excited about it.
So welcome to Monday, episode 82, March 7th, 2022. Here we go. We've got a really great show for you today. Two really great segments and talking about some interesting stuff.
Yes, very interesting, right? Those articles shocked me. So stay tuned because this is some cool information or sad information, depending on what you think about it. Wow. So much information out there.
So we want to let you guys know that this episode is brought to you by the Recovered Life contributors and viewers like you, right, Kristina?
Yes.
That are out there listening to this.
Right.
And you're the ones that we're really doing the show for, and you are the ones that are supporting the show.
Absolutely. And we thank you so much. And one of the ways to support us is to like, share, and follow. Let some people know. We also have this other way, very, very cool option now for donations for many people who've asked. And it is Buy Me Coffee, buymeacoffee.com/recovered life. For me, it will be a sports drink. For Damon, it will be a big fat espresso. But please feel comfortable jumping on too and giving us a comment so we know exactly what kind of information that you're looking for. Remember, it's buymeacoffee.com/recovered life.
And
also,
Kristina, it helps. It really does help. And I got to tell you, I'm on my almost second cup of coffee here on a Monday, so we need it. But actually, all the money goes to, we just pump back into the show.
Exactly.
Letting people know that are in recovery or getting into recovery how to live their best recovered life.
That's so true. So you can find us too on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Also, if you are driving or on the treadmill and you can't watch, make sure that you look for us on your favorite podcast platform, The Recovered Life, and you can get these episodes there along with a bunch of interviews. So make sure that you join, like, and follow.
Absolutely. Let's dive right into the show here, Kristina. I have an interesting article that I found that I wanted to talk with you about, and I'm going to put it up here on screen. It's
scary.
It is scary that it's a CNN health article, and it says that people at age 50, this is a study that they did, who drank a pint of beer, 6-ounce glass of wine a day in the last month, had brains that appeared 2 years older than those who only drank a half of that serving, right?
Right.
So if they only drank a half of that serving, their brains were actually shrinking. And I sent this to you and you were like,
no way.
I can't even believe this.
Well, and it went on to say that 3 units of alcohol, which I never drank 3 units of alcohol, actually added 3.5 years to your age, if you could believe that. And the actual person who wrote this explained that it's a little askew because it's probably a lot bleaker because it's accumulative. So for the 6 years that I drank, technically more than 3 units, I was shortening my life by years and years and years because it is accumulative. They did this with, it looks like 6,000 people. Let me look here. But they put it against a subset of, they had 36,000 people who took part of this study, and they compared it to a 500,000 unit study
Wow.
about the differences. And what that study shows is that they were able to even put it in subcategories. So depending on your health unit, I was a smoker when I drank. The two went hand in hand. I am so grateful that, abstinence became my way of life, because hopefully I've done some regeneration in all of these areas. I mean, shrinking the brain makes it more understandable, maybe to people who don't have a drinking problem, about why it is so hard to stop drinking, right? Because we don't have access to our prefrontal cortex, and we're shrinking our brain literally.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I brought this up so the people who are watching this on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, I'm actually brought it up on the screen right now. And those of you who are tuned into the podcast, we'll just read some of this stuff for you. This is a CNN health article. And basically it's saying, to really break it down, is that one drink per day can shrink your brain.
No
and
kidding.
you're
30 days,
you're moving backwards
too.
for 30 days. Now, this was the interesting thing, because it didn't talk about regeneration, right?
No, it didn't.
And this always fascinates me, because look, if you've been in recovery for any period of time, people who are in their 80s and 90s that are still drinking, right?
Right.
And you're like going, wow, like, how is that impairing, if you're drinking 20, 30 years, how is that impairing your judgment, your ability to process thoughts and feelings, right? It's really significant.
Yeah. And the things, I grew up in the 12-step program, and they talked about how we are at the age that we quit drinking, right? We're at the age that we started drinking, both emotionally, spiritually. And so our physical self is getting worse and worse, and we're not growing emotionally. And if you layer that on top of this study, that belief system, it's like science is coming out and proving, this old book that has been around 80 years, that it was actually true. Now, I do know there is neuroplasticity, which they found out, 20 years ago. They started to realize the brain is actually plastic, so we can repair it. But I cannot imagine 30 days causing that much damage. It is frightening.
It is frightening. And, and the thing is that when they, in this, they talk about the benefits of alcohol right now. I'm going to look, let's dive into the whole alcoholic
red
addiction
wine
conversation, which, look, if you're listening to the Recovered Life show, you're probably in recovery or thinking about getting in recovery, right?
Correct.
Or associated with recovery in some way. And here's the thing, alcohol especially, and I saw this with wine, Kristina.
Mm-hmm.
Alcohol companies pump up
They sure do.
This whole thing about how the benefits of alcohol. Look at your anxiety. It would be, and and I think a lot of people get sucked into crossing the line because they've been fed this thing about, hey, a little bit of alcohol is going to be good for you. It's going to relax your thing. It's going to have antioxidants. It's going to have whatever they're selling at that point, right? Whatever health benefit.
It's such a crock.
This is saying that that's not true. They're saying small amounts of alcohol are gonna hurt you.
Well,
even small amounts.
Right. And I remember being pregnant, and I had been sober 7 years, and the waiters saying, studies have shown us that a glass of red wine is actually very helpful.
Right.
And, he didn't know that I was in sobriety. He had no idea, but I was like, no, thank you. And I thought, oh my God, when he said that, wow, we have really taken it. And I think it was like a news story on 60 Minutes about how red wine could help our heart. But I've said it before on this show, nobody talks about the fact that drinking alcohol on a regular basis actually increases your risk of 5 different types of cancer. And so I love this story because it speaks to not only alcoholics, recovering alcoholics who know that we've made the right decision for ourselves because the risk was immediate, but I also think it actually reveals how dangerous alcohol is. And even in the smallest amounts, it's dangerous.
And, and you start to, and the thing is that I like about this is that I think that's starting to come out. One of the things that, they talk a lot in 12 steps groups about is science.
Yes.
And then about how science hasn't really caught up.
True.
With this whole thing about alcoholism, because, even, I got to tell you, even doctors, like I know anybody who's gone into surgery has had a conversation with an anesthesiologist or a doctor or whatever, when they say, hey, do you drink? Do you use drugs? Do you do this, right? Do you eat fatty foods? Do you when they ask
Tell
you
the truth.
that,
Yes.
yeah, that stuff, many people say, oh, I'm in recovery. But it's interesting how many doctors don't understand alcoholism in general.
True.
It's scary. Like,
True.
I don't know if this is true, so I'm just throwing this out there, but I heard that, a doctor told me that they get like a half a day or a day on addiction
I'm
in medical
not
school.
surprised.
Like, but yet you look at the emergency room, anybody who's ever broken a bone or, had an emergency appendicitis that has to go in to an emergency room, we'll see it's got a quarter of it. I don't know what the actual numbers are.
More.
Yeah, is all alcohol related, right? It's alcohol related, drug related, and
Yes.
people are in there because of either the ramifications of what they did when they took it, or actually the substance itself. So it's interesting now that science is starting to catch up to say, hey, you know what? This might not be good for you at all.
No. And I've read several books on the science of addiction, and I love, the ones that say, listen, this is the stuff that you put in your car to drive. Make no mistake, it's the same alcohol. And just like we wouldn't drink nail polish remover, we're drinking something that has the words gin on it. That is the same thing in many ways. It's been infused. I hope I'm not demonizing alcohol, but I believe it's really important. Actually, maybe I don't. Maybe I'm okay with demonizing alcohol, because it's so important for people to have this information when they're trying to make decisions.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, let's talk about something else too, that, what I like about the Recovered Life Show, Kristina, is you and I could dive into some controversial issues.
Yes.
And I'm just going to say it right now. This is post years of pro-alcohol propaganda.
So
everywhere. And I'm going to tell you what's going to happen here. We're going to see studies like this 5 or 10 years from now about casual marijuana use.
Right.
Because I'm going to tell you, I saw over the last 10 years specifically, when people started to come out and push this, especially to kids. And look, I say what you want. I know people are going to get really pissed about this. I'm going to get comments on this, but here's the pro marijuana thing about how it will cure cancer, how it will do this, and look, alcohol, if I was in the Old West and I had a gunshot wound, I get it. I would take a couple shots of whiskey, because that was the only thing that could numb the pain.
Right.
But look, we're not living in that world anymore. And it's the same thing with marijuana. I see kids burnt out at 22, 23, 24, 25, coming in, trying to get sober. And they still have people in their life telling them, not like, hey, cut down. They're telling them marijuana is totally fine. It's a natural product. It's a plant. It's not going to do. And we've known that it causes secular vomiting. It causes all kinds of crap. And we're pumping this out. We've got it on election things. And, and what's happening now, Kristina, I'm just going to be blunt and say it, is what's happening now is the ramifications of all this. Let's drink at every social event.
True.
Let's weave alcohol sponsorship into everything.
Everything.
This is what we're finding.
Well, and if you find, and we talked on this show about the female alcoholic, the gray area drinker. Well, when you read this article, that's a gray area drinker. I don't think is a gray area drinker anymore. When you recognize what we're doing to shorten our life and the marketing dollars that go behind it. I mean, we've got T-shirts at Target that say "Rosé all day," and we have this whole mommy culture, with wine. Having a glass of wine, and even one glass of wine can hurt your brain function and shrink your brain. And so, if you think about it like that, we are inundated with the fact, and it's like a liberation. Like, I have the right now. As far as marijuana, I think that that it's interesting that the alcohol section, the manufacturers of alcohol do not have the same sanctions as drugs do. And marijuana can be medicine, but it's the kind of medicine that you get from the doctor under supervision. It's for certain specific things, just like ketamine, some of the studies that they found out about ketamine helping soldiers with PTSD. So I'm more open to having actual research, but I find it very interesting that there is no research. I mean, this is one study. We're starting to get there, but I do believe, and I saw it on 1,000 Hours Dry, which is an Instagram story where they said that the next generation will look at alcohol consumption like this generation looks at smoking.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is that I want to look at this article real quick. So
put on
people
those
listening
glasses.
on the podcast, I'm putting on my smart glasses. But
Uh-oh.
we're talking about a really small amount of alcohol.
Yes.
8 grams.
Yes.
Okay. So this is the whole thing. And when you're talking about marijuana, when you're talking about this, Kristina, and I know this is, I'm turning, it's like, where's Damon going with this? People are listening. It's like, I'm talking about like just the whole popularization of it. Like, look, right now you're talking about ketamine. Ketamine is like basically a horse tranquilizer, right? Like, and I know I'm going to get comments about pro ketamine people as soon as this is transcribed, right? And I get it. Like, look, I think if I'm having surgery, I'm going under anesthesia, right? But here's the thing. When they say, hey, it's only going to be, and this is going to be the counter. Hey, many people smoke marijuana or many people drink casually, and it's totally fine. And do I want to outlaw these things? I don't. You know me, I'm very libertarian about this. Like, I think that actually hurts in a lot of ways, right?
Sure.
Like the strict, like you can't do anything. Like some things, especially, like there's some things like fentanyl that's out there. There's a huge war on that just because people are dropping dead, right?
Right.
But marijuana is a slow burn, but alcohol is super dangerous. It's coming out now. It's harder to get sober in some cases than get off heroin.
Yes.
Right. Like it's hard. It's harder. Right. So people don't understand. And it used to be less than 1 in 10. Now we were talking the other day that we can no longer say 3 in 10 people are suffering from addiction.
It could be 4 in 10. Yeah.
It could be 4 in 10. Look, if that was granola bars at the grocery store, they'd pull that at 1 in 10.
Yes.
If it's the thing, right? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I think that people just gloss over this. And when you really look into this is affecting a lot of people.
It so is. And it's affecting you even if you don't have the big losses. That's what this article proved. It's affecting you even if you don't have losses like I did, where I broke out in not handcuffs, but, I absolutely would embarrass myself and act like a fool and black out and not even know what happened the night before. So I think that, again, we'll say it over and over again. It's one of the reasons why Recovered Life exists, that it is a great exploration into what we have been doing with our bodies and hurting ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think to just kind of recap this, and look, I know that sometimes I get comments from people that, they'll say, hey, you know what, Damon, you didn't nail that totally. Like you're missing this piece or this piece. Put it in the comments. Like, look, I'm somebody that learn, and I'm not somebody who thinks that everybody that drinks alcohol smokes marijuana or whatever is an addict, right? Like I actually think that it takes a little bit of time, or you have to be a little predisposition for it a little bit. Like I believe that there's a genetic component with that a little bit. Not always, but sometimes. So, and there's a mystery to it. Like, so I sure in the hell don't know.
Yes.
But I will tell you, this is pointing more to my case than the people who've been on me about this.
It absolutely is. And the more attention that it goes, the more people, I know in Canada, they're thinking of putting the warning label. I don't know if it's passed yet, about how dangerous alcohol really is. Now, I also have the other side, being a high support needs mother, where I know mothers and, marijuana has been what has helped their child not seize. But those are extreme cases. And that's why I say, from a medicinal standpoint, I love to have the option. We know war on drugs doesn't work. We know a lot of things were taken off the table for research. And so I like the fact that door is opening if somebody's suffering from PTSD and nothing has worked. And in that case, it's harm reduction. Yeah. But the general public really needs to think twice before.
Look, and we're going we're going to do some shows about the whole thing with, look, they're using microdosing and stuff like that. And by the way, with trauma and all this other stuff, and that's not what I'm commenting
I
on.
know. That's what I'll make sure.
I'm commenting on the rank and file general. Let's watch 85 commercials during the Super Bowl that have to do with alcohol.
Absolutely.
Right. You know what I mean? And I'll tell you, anyone who's just newly sober or somebody that has somebody they're listening to the show, maybe they have an aunt, an uncle, a son, a loved one, somebody that you're married to, boyfriend, girlfriend, that's just going through the recovery process, and you've stumbled on the show and you're listening to it, you're now aware. Like I remember when I first got sober, I had people, and this was in the 90s, Kristina, I had family members come up and said, I didn't understand until you were in the room with me. And I was kind of sensitive of the fact that you were in your first year of recovery. They're like, I didn't understand how much alcohol is everywhere,
right?
How it's marketed to it and pushed on us. And do you want it at, you're just talking about how the waiter, when you're pregnant, is pushing it on you, right?
Visibly pregnant. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. It's too common. So keep having it.
This has been a great segment, guys. And I got to tell you, we have more show ahead, and you're really going to want to hang on, because we've got we're talking about something in the next segment that everybody is going to really, it shocked me, honestly.
You did,
when we did it. Yeah. But I want to do a little, I want to mention something here before we go into our segment break, Kristina, if I can. You're a codependency expert.
Yes.
And this is what you do when you coach people and work in codependency.
Yes.
And you and I put together this thing called Can't Say No.
Yes, please.
Tell us a little bit about this.
Well, it's a 3-day challenge. And what I give people is just the beginning parts of looking at how many times you say yes when you wanted to say no. That's definitely something I specialize in, helping people learn how to do that. And this helps you set up some boundaries. You're going to get real tips on how to quit saying yes instead of no. And you're going to be able to look at the reasons why you do that. So it's very, very simple to do, but it isn't easy. And so hopefully, and people have told me so, that after watching the videos and taking the challenge, they're now aware of how many times they have crossed their own boundaries.
So listen, if you guys listen, just sorry to cut you off, Kristina, but if you're out there and you're listening, you're like, can't say no. I don't know if I think, listen, this is for anyone who's an over volunteer.
Yes.
You're always getting stuck. You're always a person that's cooking the dinner at the family event. You're the person who is always the person that for some reason is still working on that, like, kids soccer game. You're always a team mom. You're always the team dad. You're always over volunteering, right? Absolutely. And you have a problem setting boundaries. And I have to tell you why this is good is a lot of people might not say, hey, am I codependent? They're not going to say that, Kristina.
No.
But what they wanted, but they might see certain traits. This 3-day challenge is so great because, one, it's 100% free.
Yes.
And all you have to do is go on, and it gives you 3 days of videos. And it works through how to say no, how to set healthy boundaries, because even though you might not be codependent in everything that you do, you might have an area of your life where you're not setting boundaries well and are having a hard time saying no. And this is the course for you. And it's 100% free.
Yes, please join it. I put some real gems in there to help everybody just start in the most painless way that they can.
And here's how you get the Can't Say No free 3-day challenge. All you have to do is go to recoveredlife.us/can't say no. That's recoveredlife.us/can't say no. So when we come back, Kristina,
yes,
we are going to go into the next segment. So everybody hold on. We've got a small little break and we'll be back.
You're listening to the Recovered Life Show.
Nice.
Welcome back to the Recovered Life Show. Kristina, segment 2. Here we are.
Before we go, I wanted to make sure, since we just dropped a bunch of information, the way that you can support the show is to like, follow, and share. So we need to have your participation so we can continue to bring beautiful topics. You can find us on all the platforms. If you're watching the show, you can also find us on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as Twitter. But we're also in the podcast platforms out there. If you're in your car and you can't watch, you can listen. And make sure to share this with somebody else who is also going down this road in recovery.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for mentioning that too, because I've been hearing from a lot of people, Kristina, that, they tune into the live show. They'll see us on YouTube or Facebook. They'll watch the replays on Instagram TV or on the Recovered Life app. And they love it, but they want to be able to listen to it on the way to dropping the kids off to school.
Sure.
Or they want to, on the way back, or they want to listen to it at work, right? They want it like on the way, or have it on the background at the gym. I know we've got a person that joins us on the gym every day at the treadmill. Yeah. And I think that that's so great. And, having it on Apple and Spotify and Google, it allows us to be able to do that. And thank you so much for mentioning that. And guys, definitely join us. You can find out all about the show and the brand and Recovered Life by going to recoveredlife.us. Kristina, I got to tell you, you found this. You texted me this weekend. I was out of town at a little family event for like these little one-day things with my daughter, little sports thing. And you text me this and you're like, oh my gosh, the
came
US
from the Army.
Tell me about this. I was shocking.
Well, I always check, what's out there using the word codependency. And this article came up and it blew my mind and this is a recent article, and it talked about how prevalent codependency is, and in the Army, they have a chaplain that does the counseling and helps families, and they have their own unique situation, right? If they're moving around. And the chaplain discussed how prevalent codependency is when it comes to their counseling. In fact, he said, it shocks me that the person who, I still love him, even if they're being abused and it's not a good situation. And the fact that Army talks about it, we generally, a lot of times out there, people kind of tend to genderize codependency and say that it falls in the women's lap or the female partner, that it tends to look like a woman who's needy and she's helping her alcoholic or her partner, whatever that might be. But one of the statistics that came up about a study says that the American population demonstrates codependency by 90%. Can you believe that? And I think the fact that the Army felt it was important enough to put this on their website made me just happy, because when I'm doing my work, I also work with men, and it is definitely not a gendered issue. Plenty of men also deal with codependency, and they go in to explain it. And what I love about it is it's kind of bringing recovery into the mainstream. They talk about Melody Beattie's definition, and they talk about the book Codependent No More. And they talk about low-level codependency behavior. And it means, a spouse who alters their behavior to support the dysfunction of an alcoholic husband or wife in the hope of saving them, which is high-level codependency. And what I loved is that they admitted low-level codependency almost certainly exceeds a prevalence of 90%.
Wow.
While high-level is about 50%. So I wanted to share that because I want anybody to know that if you have that going on in your life, let's say 90% of you do, that it's important to talk about it and get some recovery. Well,
I just brought, just real quick, Kristina, I brought this up on the screen so people could see it. And, I want to comment on something that you said here. One of the things that is interesting about this article is, one, that the U.S. Army is doing it.
Yes.
But after thinking about this a little bit and having so many conversations with, alcoholics and people in recovery about codependency, the more I read this, the less shocking it became. And I'm going to tell you why. I think actually, I bet you, and it doesn't say this here. I didn't see this here. Maybe it did.
Okay.
I think that people that are in the U.S. Army probably suffer at a higher rate,
really,
of codependency, and I'll tell you why. because I've known a lot of people that, that served, and many of the people that I went to high school with served, and many of them in the Army. And I found those people to be much more the protector type, right? They
Oh,
really
okay.
felt a sense of obligation to protect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a wonderful, beautiful thing. And I applaud anybody who's listening to this that's a veteran or in the armed services. Thank you for protecting us. But I will tell you from a psychoanalysis point of view, right?
Uh-huh.
From a non-psychologist, to say it, the opinion is that sometimes I find this in codependency hidden with men is a sense that they have to protect everything and everyone, even
Absolutely.
if they're unhappy, and even if it's bad, if people are acting out, they feel they have to protect it.
Well, they adjust their behavior, which is what we're talking about. I mean, they adjust their behavior. Perhaps they feel, like you said, even if they have feelings, that they're not allowed to share them because that will
Yeah.
affect the other person so greatly and hurt the other person. And, we have a lot of depression in the Army. We have a lot of PTSD based on, depending on where they were. It is a system that is based on the patriarch mostly. And it doesn't allow for boundaries. Once somebody is steeped in this ability that you do what you're told to do and you show up like a good soldier, it doesn't leave a lot of room for discussing feelings or showing up a little scared or a little sad or a little less than. And when you look at imposter syndrome, you layer it on top of codependency, you've got a bunch of people running around not able to express themselves, not feeling understood, having to shove the feelings down. And you're right. I would imagine if you are a soldier, male or female, you have this persona that you're portraying, and everybody, every human on this planet has fear, has anger, has sadness, has concern. And the fact that they hide it in order to portray some kind of something that the other person may need, which is "You're my white knight." I remember Brene Brown's Daring book, and she shares in that book that she was writing, autographing books, and a man came up to her and he said, "It's very interesting to me that all of your stories about women." And she said, "Well, yeah, I'm a woman and this is about women." And he says, "Okay, that's very convenient." And so she was like, "Okay, tell me more." And he went on to, and of course I'm paraphrasing, to say that he could never show up in his marriage or with his daughters, because that's who he was getting the book signed for, anything other than a white knight.
Yeah.
Anything other, they would not accept it. And that is one of the such a beautiful story, because it explains, it brings in toxic masculinity. I mean, you talk about a group of people that are feeling the pressure of toxic masculinity. I can't think of another group than the Army that would have that much pressure on it.
Well, listen, I don't always agree with you on everything.
Okay, tell me.
This is one where I don't. Look, when you're in combat, you can't have a huddle to say, "Hey Bob, hey Sue, let's talk about our feelings."
No.
It's just not, it's not the place. And so I sometimes think that the armed services get a bad rap with that. Because that's just, you can't do that. I mean, like, it'd be great if we could in a perfect world, but the reality is that feelings don't have to do a lot with the actual participating in warfare
Sure.
side of it. It's the application of what you've been trained to do, right? But I do agree with the fact that men are set up in a system to be the savior. And I do believe that everyone that I've known, I got to tell you, I don't know. I even know people who were in the Army, Kristina, who went on after and ended up in prison and all kinds of stuff. They still have service baked, right? Even when they were using, still, the whole, like, I have to serve or I have to be of service to people is baked in to the armed services. So, but this makes people unhappy sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think that's more modern than we realized. In World War II, they sent people home. They diagnosed people with nostalgia, and they realized that these young men needed to go home for a month or two to get their head straight. They needed it. I mean, it was literally a diagnosis. So it hasn't always been that it has to be continued, right? Continued, I'm going to show up and I have no feelings. I feel like the reason why the chaplain gets these numbers and talks about 90% is because they continue that belief system. They feel very strongly that they have to, even in their homes, without getting help.
To be clear, Kristina, I don't believe that people can't have feelings ever.
I know that.
In the Army. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that I think sometimes people, they mix up what they're doing and the feelings and stuff. And look, not everybody who enters the Army comes from a healthy family background. Mm-hmm. And I think the most important thing about this, the most important thing about this article that I saw, that it made me think of you when I saw this article, because it says chaplains can remind counselees that people who practice codependency are almost always unhappy. And it says they expect that their enabling behavior will make the codependent person better.
Yes.
When they are enabled reinforces codependency. Right?
Yes.
They'll expect
that the ugly side.
That it will be repaid, and fail to recognize that dependence will not repay it. Right? And this is the thing that whether you are in the armed services or not, that I loved about this article, because I've never really heard codependency broken down in that transactional kind of way before.
And it speaks to the manipulation part, which we always get to in our work. Eventually, we start to figure out that we had these invisible contracts with these people where, and I'll speak to just my experience. I had an invisible contract with every romantic relationship that I had, which is I will turn myself inside out and love you to the point that you get better. And when they don't get better, I was mad as hell. I was so mad. Like, don't you see? I'm loving you to get better. You can't stay sick. And knowing that, we wouldn't do it, if somebody had a terminal illness, but depression, anxiety, alcoholism, these are all very serious ones that will lead to death. And those of us who are on the manipulative side, I'll be the first person to say I was a manipulator in my codependency. I never did anything because I wanted you I never did anything without the idea that you were going to repay it in some way, that you were going to be my project.
Look, we know, Kristina, that, it's been so interesting, like doing clubhouse rooms and things like that. We know when we talk with codependency is not passive, it's aggressive.
Yes.
It's not. And this is the big, I think if people are listening to this and go, why are people in a recovery show talking about codependency? Look, I've never met, like you said, I've never met an alcoholic who is not also a codependent in some way or another, right? Because there's always an enabler around or something. And when you start to get sober and you start to, after years go by, and you start to unwind your family dynamic and your relationships in your life, you start to realize it's like, wow, the practice of codependency is super aggressive.
Yes.
Because it's forcing people.
You're moving them around.
You're moving them around. I mean, do you find that? Like, is that an aha moment with people?
Yes. And it's the sneakiest thing, because like children of a codependent mother don't understand why they're angry with their mother, because she gave her life for them. They don't recognize that she gave her life for them so that they would be a certain way, and they didn't get the choice to be who they really are.
Yes.
It's so attached to victimhood and martyrdom, but it's also people that are, leaders. They're people that can't fail, for anyone, that can't make choices to put themselves ahead of somebody else, that leader that stays later and serves first. There's nothing wrong with that, unless you're doing it with resentment, with anger, and you're showing up dishonestly. And that is something that I hope people will start to see, that it isn't just the typical relationship of an alcoholic and a Al-Anoner or a codependent who's doing everything they can do to help that alcoholic get sober. That's how the term was created. It was created by AA to describe this, but it also includes leaders at work, who manipulate their employees, who are everything to their employees. Codependency was in every relationship I had. And often a codependent is an incredibly hard worker. So it's very, very tricky to understand. And when I work with several people, they will say, I don't understand why I resent this person so much. But when we get down to it, it's what that love, that coddling, that love bombing meant that they had to be. And so they resent it whenever it shows up again in their life.
Yeah. This happens over and over and over
Sure
again.
does.
We're talking about the Army, but the thing is about why work is so difficult with codependency is because work is already transactional.
Yes, and
So
it's rewarded.
I'm doing this, I'm going to get this back, right? But the thing is that people will take it like we did a great show about codependency and work.
Yes.
And what the comments on that show and why people love that show so much, that past episode, is that, people realize it's like, well, this relationship isn't transactional at all in the way that I thought it was.
Right.
I'm giving all this energy out. These people didn't even request me to do this.
Yes.
I'm trying to save this department and get this charity
Help you
moving.
with your marriage. Yes.
Yeah, it's like, you know what? Like, it's like, this is inappropriate. Like, and it's the whole thing about setting boundaries that makes this so great, is that as you start to realize this, you can set boundaries. And one of the things it didn't say is how they actually are enacting this in the Army, right?
Right.
Which it'd be interesting to see how they're doing that.
I would totally love to understand how they're going about. I mean, they talk about boundaries. They talk about respecting other people's boundaries. They talk about the fact that most codependency begins in childhood. Well, all codependency begins in childhood, and how people learn to silence and bury their emotions. And the idea of being able to record your emotions and describing them to a chaplain with codependency, rediscover their feelings as well as a sense of self. So they do have a few little tips about moving forward, but they're not saying how the Army is going to do this. And with the issues that we have with soldiers and the PTSD and soldiers, committing suicide, it's something that they've got to get it. They've got to start digging deeper. It has to be more of the conversation that we have. When you are a codependent, it's really important to realize that what you're doing is actually not from love. It's from fear.
Yeah. Well, we need to, I think if anybody's listening to this and is in the Army and deals with this, or in any armed services and deals with this, we'd love to have you on the show.
Yes.
And I think that's something that we have to do, is we have to reach out, because there are so many veterans that are in there. And there's people, look, I know people who have gone into the armed services sober, and that's a whole other conversation. And they're being way more supportive than they used to. There didn't used to be, but there's now sometimes whole companies of people that are, multiple people are sober. And I know that that's also an experience. So I think there's so many good things going on here. And when I saw this, it actually made me feel good. I was like, you know what? Things are moving in a direction that are good. People are becoming aware of this, and it's going to stop a lot of pain.
It is. And your company is going to run better. And one of the things that I do is I work with companies on how do you make room for your employees to deal with their trauma, how you treat them, what is the culture. I was a great employee because I was dying to be recognized. And I would put my bosses, my supervisors in this entire situation that it was a family dynamic, which is one of the things that we discussed in that episode. Yes. How much I would layer my experience on top of this person. And as much as that might sound unprofessional, your employees are showing up with it anyway. And it's getting in the way of production and happiness, and it's getting in the way of retention. And so it has to, each employer or the Army, whatever we're talking about, the business world, has to make room for solution in this area.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? Thank you for bringing this to my attention. And I'm glad that we were able to have a conversation about this today, because it's a huge issue. And we're going to have more conversations on the Recovered Life Show. We're coming to the end here of episode 82, Monday, March 7th. This is great. We're going live, guys, 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, on or about 8 o'clock. We're getting closer and closer.
We are.
We're getting closer and closer to hitting that 8 every time that we go out. And you guys could check us out on all of the podcast channels. Kristina, Dennis, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Was a super great episode, and we will see you Wednesday.
Bye, y'all. Have a beautiful
Bye, guys.
day.
Keep the conversation going. Join Recovered Life, a community of like-minded people who are looking to live their best recovered lives. Membership is free, and you can apply at recoveredlife.us.